What see you in the horizon's bruised smear that cannot be blotted out by your raised hand?
Hello, and welcome to the Legendary Green Team's Malazan series. Welcome to episode 1 of the Deadhouse Gates series. If you haven't listened to our previous episodes, go back and listen and then come back. I am Hurinfan, and I am joined today by the BefuddledPanda.
Hello, everyone.
JasnahAsABoy.
Hello.
And Ashaman.
Hi, guys.
As a reminder, this is BefuddledPanda's first time reading Deadhouse Gates. Jasnah has read Deadhouse Gates, is reading the series for the first time, and Ashaman and myself are Malazan veterans. Today we're covering Deadhouse Gates' prologue to the end of Chapter 6. If you haven't read these chapters or want a plot refresher, please stop listening here, as everything in these chapters is fair game for discussion, so spoilers galore. We're still going to take it chapter by chapter, but we are going to address certain problems with each chapter. What characters and scenes stood out to you, any favorite lines, and any questions for the group. So, shall I start with the prologue summary?
Yes.
Okay. It's a doozy. A priest of Hood covered in flies approaches Felisin, Gano's sister. It says it has a secret for Hiborik, the handless former priest of Fenner, standing next to Felisin. The flies fly away to reveal nothing underneath. There is a coal of nobility going on. They are being sent into slavery. Bowden, a thug, will protect Felisin as they make their way through the city to the slave ships. He violently kills an older noblewoman to satiate the bloodlust of the peoples. Tavor, Felisin's sister, is now adjunct and does not save Felisin from slavery. Seems like she had a hand in Felisin's bondage. So, that was quite the opening, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
A lot of really visceral imagery. So let's start with the priest of Hood, because like the very first thing you see or is described to you is literally a shambling body that's covered from head to toe in flies, and you cannot see anything.
Gross.
I think that's metal.
Yeah. The priests of Hood are hardcore, but I guess they would be since they're worshipping the god of death.
Was it a priest?
Hmm?
So I interpreted it as it was actually Hood there.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah. I think it was
definitely.
definitely Hood. But like
Oh.
he was following the tradition of the priests of Hood to like cover themselves in blood and then let the flies swarm all over them for this particular ritual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gross, right?
Yeah, that's disgusting.
Or at least somebody from like the House of Death, but probably Hood.
And he says he has a secret for Hiborik. What do you think that secret is?
That it was actually Hood? I don't know.
Oh, you didn't think about it?
Okay, to be honest, like I was like, oh, I could spend time thinking about what the secret is, or I could just keep going. I just kept going.
That's my philosophy for reading. I never try to suss anything. Jasnah, did you have any ideas?
Well, aside from the secret being that there just wasn't a priest there, I have. You should ask me again as we go through Memories of Ice, because I
Okay.
do have a tinfoil hat theory, but it needs more context.
All right. So did we have any scenes that stood out other than the Hood flies thing?
I mean, this is like my favorite character and scene. Hiborik, or Heberik, however people want to say it. He's got balls. Like the priest or whatever fly swarmed thing comes up to him and it's like, yeah, I'm gonna show you a secret, and then Hiborik's just like, all right, show me. And yeah, but I found his character to be the most I don't know, I just liked his character most out of all the ones that we've seen. He was very protective of Felisin, but he's also very you can tell that he's gone through things. Obviously his hands have been chopped off, right? There's a reason why. but also he's like he was a former priest and then a historian, and I think he was something else
Thief.
as a thief.
Yeah, before he was a priest.
Yeah. So he's had quite the life. I feel like his character will have like interesting interactions and things to say throughout the book.
Yeah, definitely out of those three, he's the most likable.
Yep.
Ashman?
I love this prologue, as I will love many of the chapters from here on out. I think it sets the tone of the book very well. I think it also starts the sad motif of people going crazy well, kind of like a mass hysteria kind of thing. It kicks off Fellison's storyline, and oh boy, I rereading. So on my initial read, I, like many others, didn't really like Fellison that much.
Okay.
But coming back to it, man, she's such a good character. She's so well written, and she's so tragic. She's like 15, and she is already going through this, betrayed by her own sister, forced to watch her mother get killed, I think, in front of her. And then, yeah, getting the lovely experiences that happen when they make their way to the boats, which is
Mm-hmm.
an intentionally cruel scene by the Empress to send a message to the rest of the Empire. So there's that.
Can't forget the chainsaw.
And the chainsaw,
Oh.
Was one of
I
the
like-
most disturbing things I've ever read.
yeah. Continuing with my trend of liking characters that are really effective at what they do, I actually really like Bowden. Because he's
You
just
would.
yeah, he don't mess with him. He will mess you up. And he will not he's also just the kind of guy who's the strong silent type. He will not complain. He will just do what needs to be done. And I will always have a soft spot for those guys.
I guess one thing would be just a warning, like listeners, if you decide to listen to this episode without reading the book, there's a lot of mature content and probably all sorts of there are all sorts of trigger warnings. So that's
Yes.
just something to be aware of. Like, yeah. Anyway.
Consider yourselves warned.
Yeah, exactly.
I just want to ask if you guys noticed something.
Okay.
So when Fellison is walking toward the slave ship, so Bowden is in front of her, right? And Hebork is behind her. Hebork doesn't have any hands.
Mm-hmm.
And she heard screaming and realized it came from her own throat. A bestial snarl sounded behind her, and she felt the hand clench spasmodically. Then it was gone. More screaming filled her ears.
I just assumed that was someone from the crowd.
Yeah. Same.
And then Bowden probably killed whoever that was. Or maybe
I don't know.
I don't know.
He was a former priest of Fenner who was the boar god.
I don't
and
know
he
what
had
that
a-
means.
Finnair is basically god that is aspected to boars and war.
And summer.
That's it. And summer, but we learn
Yeah.
that later.
Yeah.
That doesn't explain the hands.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Karen.
I think he had like
Ghost
I don't
hands.
know. Maybe.
I don't think so. I think that's a wild theory, but
Okay.
I don't think we get ghost hands work.
My reading of that was the maddened crowd. They were reaching out and grabbing at Fellison.
Yeah, she got all of her clothes torn away.
Yeah.
Literally
Dang.
stripping away her innocence.
Ugh. Poor girl.
I think it's fair to say that Fellison was kind of defined by that prologue moment.
In a lot of
Yeah,
ways, yeah.
Or not defined, severely affected by it.
Damaged.
Yeah. What Ash was saying about the prologue setting the tone. Like, it's so different. So
From Gardens
different
of the Moon?
from
Yeah.
Gardens of the Moon. I was not prepared going into Deadhouse Gates. Although, I mean, like, the book is called Deadhouse Gates, so kind of could have drawn that from the title, but it took some adjustment because I was enjoying Gardens so much, and I was like, yeah, let's go on this adventure and figure things out. And they're, the bridge burners are gonna go off and do other things, and then the prologue is just like, nope, we're taking another direction.
Yeah. I think this is the only way that he could have written this, even if he wanted to go later, because obviously in real life, revolutions are always incredibly bloody and savage, especially the further back you go. And Erikson isn't one to shy away from the bad things that humans do. So it's not, we knew going in that this was going to be covering the rebellion of the Seven Cities, or at least it was going to be set in the Seven Cities, which is on the brink of a rebellion. And yeah, he's not going to sugarcoat any of this. There's not going to be like an idealized version of a freedom fighter or on any side, the Empire occupying the Seven Cities or the Seven Cities working to free themselves.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I have something to say about the series as a whole. I think Deadhouse Gates is the most consistently dark. I don't think necessarily that it has the darkest moments, but yeah, it's consistently darker than the other books. Not to say that there aren't really great, like, hand
Raised fist moments.
Yeah, thank you. The words. It's still morning here, but yeah, it's dark.
I think because Ash had previously said in the primer that, there's like, you see the worst of humanity, but then you'll also see the best. Like, knowing that there's going to be those moments of hope, and which was my concern going into this. Like, I don't want to read something so depressing, just like one after the other. Knowing that there are going to be moments of hope really does help. Like, keep me motivated to actually read the book. Yeah.
Shall we move on to quotes?
Yeah.
Jasna, do you want to start?
Yeah. So how Stephen Erikson can write people from different philosophical outlooks and backgrounds convincingly. And this especially struck me because in one of our episodes for Gardens of the Moon, we were talking about Erikson's philosophy and how he's writing a book from a postmodern standpoint. And Ashaman said something along the lines of that Erikson showed by the scene we were looking at that that he doesn't believe in objective morality and that he rejects the concept of objective morality. Hurin said, I wouldn't say that he rejects the concept of objective morality. I would say that he's writing a book. And that was in my head when I saw this quote. And this isn't the only part of the prologue that, like, that human beings relate to production, relate to each other in terms of like labor relations, things like that, is like determinate of their actions, their behaviors, their ideas in general, not like every single action, but a general rule, right? And postmodernism, which Erikson uses a lot in this series, it may not reject everything that historical materialism has to say, but historical materialism is a modernist philosophy, and postmodernism implies that it's at least rejecting some of modernism, right? But anyway, so we have this quote from Haborik, who's a historian, and a lot of historians use at least a little bit of a historical materialist framework. And it says, it's not a quote from him, rather, it's like his internal monologue. It's like, it switches from Fellowson to him for like a few paragraphs or whatever. And it says, people of civilized countenance made much of exposing the soft underbellies of their psyche. effete and sensitive were the brands of finer breeding. It was easy for them, safe, and that was the whole point after all. A statement of coddled opulence that burned the throats of the poor more than any ostentatious show of wealth. And I thought, when I read this is a realistic depiction of somebody that believes this philosophy. It's convincing, and it's almost word for word from an article I was reading from an Australian guy who was writing about his experience growing up in public housing and dealing with the poorest of the poor, and then being in political spaces where people are supposedly representing the poor,
Mhm.
and they act like what is being described in this paragraph from, there's a lot of confessional behavior, a lot of talking about their traumas openly, blah, blah, blah. And he was kind of contrasting that with growing up in the ghetto basically. And nobody does this because they can't afford to, they keep it under their skin and so on. And I was just like this could have come out of that essay. And I could tell by the Australian guy that he was using this philosophy as well. So I don't know. I just thought that it's cool. I like when authors, may or may not believe the philosophies they're writing for characters, but it's believable. It's not a straw man. It's, the argument is sound, etc.
Mhm.
Just kind of
It gives fair attention to the different sides of an argument or different perspectives of something. Yeah.
Right.
You'll see that a lot. Erickson is more concerned with asking the right questions instead of giving answers.
I agree that Erickson is very good at writing characters from different viewpoints. I do still think that the series is generally postmodernist, and I don't think that he would write it such a way if he wasn't a postmodernist himself. But I I would be surprised if he wasn't. Erickson, if you ever listen to this, let me know. But basically, yeah, authors who can do this, I really respect, even though, so there are a lot of authors that have what I would say are questionable views. But reading their books, often you can't really tell, you don't get that from them, because they are good at doing this. And one author who is very good at not strawmanning other people's positions is Brandon Sanderson. He is a devout religious man, but he also incorporates very well-written atheist characters. For example, Jasnah.
Right. And the reason my Discord name is JasnahAsABoy is because she's a historical materialist, and I am too, full disclosure. And I thought, despite the fact that he's a Christian and doesn't necessarily ascribe to this philosophy, he wrote her very well. I don't know if I'm an atheist anymore, maybe more agnostic, but I still accept a lot of these ideas. Anyway, go on. Sorry to cut you off.
Oh, no worries.
You mentioned Jasnah pointedly, so
of course you have to talk about your user. But Erickson, I think, takes this one step further. He is good not only at writing different viewpoints, he's good at writing from completely different cultures and historically different periods. Oftentimes in fantasy, authors have a tendency to import our current sensibilities and viewpoints into the fantasy itself, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because of course it's fantasy, it doesn't need to be historically accurate. But Erickson very much, he's an anthropologist, so he knows what people back then were like broadly. Not to say that they were completely different, but they had a different way of seeing the world, and he does this superbly, in my opinion. He's very good at doing this.
Yeah, I appreciate the depth that he brings to his text. You can tell that he knows a lot more, the author knows a lot more, and he's just showing you enough to really build the world, flesh out the characters. Yeah, it makes me trust the author. Even if there are things that happen that I don't agree with or that I don't like reading, I still trust that the author is is going to be writing something good that I can appreciate.
Cool. Should we move on to more quotes? Because I got a few.
Yeah.
Jasnah stole mine, but I got 2 more. So this one is the description of the hood in Flies. He came shambling into Judgment's round from the Avenue of Souls, a misshapen mass of flies. Seething clumps crawled on his body in mindless migration, black and glittering, and occasionally falling away in frenzied clumps that exploded. That's cool.
It's very evocative.
And my other quote was just the prologue poem, because I think it's perfect for this book, and I think it's perfect for what Erikson goes for with his writing, in that you can put your hand into the horizon to ignore the suffering of others around you, but it's not going to erase the suffering. And that you could say, I don't want to see it, and pretend like it doesn't exist, but that doesn't do anything. Do you have any quotes you want to share, Panda?
Yes. So I think it's more of, I'm trying to think of like why I really enjoy these quotes. It's not because like they make you feel good, but it's more of how Erikson words something to really make an impact. There's one that says, "It was a sour and obvious mockery of justice that stripped away the few remaining expectations of civil behavior, stripped away civilization itself, leaving nothing but the chaos of savagery." And this was talking about how, like, they would drag in like nobles to court to like judge them, and it would be just like random, people from the streets brought in to judge these nobles. And it's just like, it, I mean, this is kind of hitting a bit close to home based on things that have happened recently, and where I live. But it's just like, I don't know what to say. It The way that he writes it, um, it just puts it out in the open very clearly, and I appreciate it. Like what we've said before, is just he does not shy away. It's not sugar coated.
Hmm.
I have an observation before we go into questions. Um, I thought so in book 1, right? In the famous table scene, the dinner scene, Lauren gets upset at Tattersale, and she says, I'm going to punish you for these things that you did years ago. And everyone's like, hey, you can't punish her. It's not her fault. It's the Empress's fault. The same thing happens in this chapter with Bowden and Heboric telling Fellison, like, hey, like, it's the Empress's fault. You should blame your sister. So do we have any questions?
I have a question. So,
Of course you do.
to what extent do you think Lazine was justified in doing something like this?
You mean the
The culling of the nobility.
Okay.
I thought you were going to ask that.
Well, I have a kind of related question, which is the triggering of riots and turning on the nobles a way to create civil unrest and therefore direct people's focus against each other rather than focusing on the throne? So it's like, I don't want these people banding up against me, so I'm going to distract them and have them fight each other.
That's certainly part of it. I think it's more has to do with so the nobles are people with power, and they have people under them. If you kill them and take their money, they can't do that. And it's easier to control poor peasants than to control rich nobles, which is one aspect of it.
Yeah, so it's a pressure valve on any like built up angst amongst the poor, and it's directing them against like selections of the nobility and other problem people, because it's not just nobles. Heboric is a historian who's basically anathema to the Empress, and so he's in there too. And it's just kind of like two birds with one stone. You let out some popular pressure, you direct it against your enemies, you get rid of some of your enemies. The ones that are left are a little scared. The money that it's more than two, because the money that you confiscate in the process now can fund your militaristic expansion and like maintaining your imperial presence abroad. So it's like a one size fits all solution to a lot of the Empress's problems.
It works really well. But question is, what was the question, Ashima? Was she justified?
To what extent do you think she was justified? Because I'm gonna have the hot take of it's not completely unjustified, because as we see later on in the book, revolutions are horrible affairs, even though sometimes it's debatable to what extent they work. I'm one of the people who generally believes in peaceful solutions to problems rather than violent ones. That's a historical question. So we know that Lazine was facing pressures. We know that the nobles were infiltrating the command structure at basically every level. And we can see the repercussions of that again in Seven Cities with a bunch of fists and other people high up that aren't qualified for their positions, which leads to more chaos and death, essentially. So,
Okay.
from a strictly short, forward-looking, consequentialist point of view, this might end up saving more people than it hurts. But who knows? It's a difficult question when you're ruling an empire, right? Do you just let these things happen? Do you try and maintain order, or whatever that means?
I mean, I think the challenge is that the empire is so big, so she can't like do more like pointed solutions for each of the problems. And this is a more efficient way of doing it. There's a lot of collateral damage, but actually, this kind of reminds me of Animander when he chose to basically give up Pale and save his own people. It's like he could have kept fighting, but at some point he wasn't willing to continue to make sacrifice or like risk his people. With Lysine, it's like at some point she maybe it was like what you're saying, Ash. This is going to have a lot of collateral damage, but in the long term, it's less damage than if she just let it go on. I don't know.
I'll also add one thing. We see in later chapters, everyone's complaining about how Lazine hasn't handled the tensions in the Seven Cities very well, and they say that the Emperor would do a better job. He would. I think
he would have
the quote
swooped
was,
in and
ripped out the beating heart of the rebellion before it got a chance to really take wing. So this could be Lazine trying to avoid the same mistakes, quote unquote mistakes, that she made in Seven Cities by doing something short and brutal so that it saves the pain of a more protracted process.
But it didn't work.
We don't know if it works in Unta or not.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a completely different continent.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So I'd say the answer to your question, is it justified? For me, would depend on a few things. One would be if there was a way to figure out with reasonable certainty that it would save more lives this way than just letting it go or taking a different approach. I mean, another would be like looking at the because like I said, historical materialists. So the productive forces, the means of producing food, clothing, and shelter for the citizens of the empire, would allowing the nobles to undermine the empire make that worse? Would allowing the empire to be completely undermined and to collapse make it harder for people to survive and live? And I'd say that feuding nobles with their own individual little fiefs is probably a lot worse for like human flourishing, economically speaking, than an empire where the nobles are kept in check and unified in one nation. So that, if there's not a more progressive option on offer than the empire, at least domestically speaking, probably justified.
I'd say it's not justified because the purposes are selfish, and it's to satiate bloodlust and vengeance. And when you're doing something for those reasons, it wouldn't be justified. Can it have good consequences? Absolutely. But when innocents like Fellison are hurt in the process, and Fellison is only one of thousands, I'm sure, who are scarred by this. So no.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point because if her orders were like more discreet, like only adults or some more specific criteria, maybe I would lean more towards justified. But because it's basically anyone, children, right? Elderly, like there's no differentiation.
So is there not though, or was Fellison selected by Tavor rather than the Empress to be part of that? Like, were there a bunch of other teenagers involved, or was Fellison specifically put there by Tavor, which is like a different?
I mean, my understanding was there wasn't a differentiation, but I could be missing something.
I don't think we actually know to what extent the nobility was culled, but I will just add in one more thing, maybe two more things. Okay, first of all, looking at history, a good example, a good analogy to this situation, I think, would be the Mongol Empire, which I hope everyone has heard of. Basically,
The what empire?
You live in Asia. You're not allowed to say that.
The mango. The mango. No, I'm just
Mango.
kidding.
Oh, the mangoes. I know them.
Yeah. They were very famously brutal and sometimes put entire cities to the sword. But also, they had a legendarily famous empire that allowed trade to flourish. And I think the quote was, a girl could have a gold plate, could carry a gold plate on her head from one end of the empire to the other without fear of being attacked. So there's that. And there's also the fact that innocents don't stay innocent forever. At some point, if you these kids would grow up and probably have some very reasonable beef with the empire, and so the cycle of violence could perhaps be perpetuated, which is a core theme in many Greek plays. You can read them if you want to read about how tragic cycles of violence are. But this is one way of heading that off before it begins.
However, the Malazan Empire is clearly not as peaceful as you just described the Mongol Empire being, because you couldn't walk across 7 cities, which is supposedly a part of the empire, with a gold plate on your head without being harmed,
So yeah,
We're still on the prologue.
We're still in the prologue.
Woof.
So the Malazans aren't equivalent, but also, okay, first of all, they're not being as brutal as the Mongols were, so maybe that's an argument for them to be more harsh. And second of all, a lot of the times we see the empire at the fringes of it, so that's
True.
necessarily going to be more chaotic. I promise I'm done now.
Ash asking the tough questions, and I mean, okay, I'll just say this. I do feel uncomfortable reading what Erickson has been writing. What Erickson has written. It does make me feel uncomfortable. But I am going to embrace that discomfort, and I can start to see why Hurin says reading the series has changed his life. He does
Chapter
ask
1.
questions.
Oh,
Okay, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
done.
It's just we've been here for 40 minutes.
I'm done. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So chapter 1. Mappo, Runt, and Icarium are traveling 7 cities. They're following a demon. They are approached by a Divers, a shapeshifter that can transform into multiple entities, and it retreats when it finds out the names of the two. In Hisar, Duiker, an imperial historian, watches the arrival of the new Fist, or general, Coltane. He's a Wiccan, and his people once fought against the Empire before they joined. There are many who still dislike the Wiccans. Malacrel is also there, sent by the High Fist Pormqual to do his bidding, but it sounds as if he's really the one in charge. Fiddler, Crocus, Apsalar, Kalam, and Moby are sailing to 7 cities, which is on the brink of rebellion. Kalam is a native. Crocus asks why they're going to 7 cities if Apsalar is from a different continent. I don't really have a lot from this chapter. I'll say that I like Icarium and Mappo, and the fighting with the Soul Taken and the Divers is really cool. Panda, do you have anything to add for chapter 1?
It was great to have Callum and Fiddler back. And the way that Fiddler handled the Soul Taken, the Denrabi, is just like, I loved it. He's so matter of fact. And yeah, the two of them, I love their brotherly relationship. Yeah. Anyway, that was my favorite scene.
Ash?
I appreciate what Mappo and Icarium bring to this book. They are 2 guys who are essentially not related at all to the conflict and don't have anything to do with it traveling through the land. That being said, they're probably my least favorite duo in the book. I really liked the stuff with the imperial politics with Duiker and Coltane and Malacrel and all of them, because they raise fascinatingly complex questions about everything, especially the Wiccans, who are a tribal group that has been recently subjugated, and now they're working for the Empress. Thinking about the morality of that is, I think, fascinating.
Is it fair to call them subjugated when they went in willingly?
Well, they're taking your orders, so.
Yeah, but they're taking your orders like by their own choice.
But
sort of.
I mean, if they didn't, what would happen?
Weren't they conquered by Kellanved?
They were not conquered by Kellanved. They fought Kellanved for many years when Kellanved was still the emperor, and Kellanved convinced them to join. And since Kellanved had been taken out, Coltane and the Wiccans were sent off to the middle of nowhere, either A, to save Coltane for an important moment like now, or B, to keep them out of the way because Ilsine doesn't trust them.
How dare Erickson name a character Malik Rel when there was another character that was Ralik Nom?
And that brings me.
At least they're not in the same book.
That's true.
Go ahead, yes.
Least favorite character, Malik Rel. And least favorite duo, Malik Rel Pomqual. I hate these guys.
I like the descriptions of Malik Rel. So Malik Rel is a Gistel, whatever that means, priest of Mael, and Mael is the god of the seas. And when Erickson introduces Malik Rel, he always uses words that are very sea-like. I don't have any examples, but if you go back and read it, it's really cool. Yeah, let's go on to favorite quotes. Yasa?
So, for once, it's Crocus quote. What? Crocus stood almost pitching himself over the side. You and a seasick sapper with a broken fiddle strapped to his back? Do you think we're going to help you in this insane suicidal... They're talking about the mission to kill the Empress, of course. It's hilarious.
I like how close Fiddler and Moby are. He's like a dad who always said, no pets, no pets, no pets. And then he comes and he's like, oh, it's okay.
My quote is actually It contains Crocus. It involves Crocus. Crocus goes like, and quick, Ben. Actually, no, just kidding. Somebody, I think it's like Fiddler, says, and quick, Ben. And Crocus just yells, "It's 3,000 leagues away," Crocus shouted. He's a squad mage for Hood's sake. That's it. A squalid little squad mage. And then Fiddler's like, not quite. And being so far away doesn't mean a thing, son. Quick Bens are shaved knuckle in the hole. And that just made me crack up because of the things that we've seen in Gardens with Quick Ben and what he can do. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's hilarious that Crocus thinks he's got everything all figured out.
Uh-huh.
He's very teenager.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have a quote, but I liked the scene. I think it was with Rylanderus, and he's about to attack Mappo and Ikariam, and Mappo's trying his hardest to get Ikariam to say his name, and so that Rylanderus finds out who they are and has to run away. And I just really like that. And he's like, "Oh, I have no beef with you. I'm gonna go."
Yeah.
So any questions about chapter 1?
Yeah. Why do the Soul Taken smell like unsugared cinnamon? Is that what their Warren smells like?
Maybe.
I don't think Soul Taken have a specific Warren, but I think it's just something that's associated with them.
I don't know what that means, Kieran.
And then on a less food-based note, and one that I might get an actual provocation with, Mappo indicates that he or Ikariam or both are able to predict convergences, saying the convergence is months away. How far ahead of time can Ikariam predict them, assuming he can? Is that the basis for the Darujistan calendar clock naming scheme? And is Ikariam basically an astrologist if astrology actually worked?
Ooh.
I don't think that he can actually. Maybe he can. I don't know. I'd say that just based on the current state of 7 cities, that like anybody could probably guess that there's a convergence happening. And on top of that, I have all of these Soul Taken and Divers coming and converging. So I don't know. Maybe just 1 + 1 = 3.
Months, though? They specifically know it's months away, not days, not weeks.
I mean, that's an excellent observation, and especially he's the keeper of calendars or the maker of clocks.
Well, the oh, wait, that Ikariam?
Yeah, that's the Ikariam
from
book 1.
Gardens?
Yeah.
Oh my god, how did I
He has the
not?
Troll Companion.
I told you would have answers within days of our last recording.
Well, I
do you
told
remember
you that I
Ashaman
was
said,
going.
that guy's
I
never going to
told
come
you-
up again or something like that?
I told you that I was going to not think about it.
I figured that my saying it's your answers are days away was like enough to make you think about it.
It took me a little while. Okay, sorry. Cool. Thank you. What was I gonna say?
Don't sweat it. I never noticed.
I didn't either. Don't worry about it.
Jasnah, I give you props. Although this is like your 3rd time reading Deadhouse Gates.
It is, and in my 4th time reading Gardens, I definitely paid attention to Ikariam, that's for sure. Does anyone else have questions, or do we want to chapter? Oh, go ahead.
I did, which is okay, and I know Lady Sweden also has this question about the whole Soul Taken and divers. Do we really know like what the nature of how they work? Like, do they? Well, with Animander, we saw that he had control over like when he shifts. We don't actually see very many occurrences of when somebody makes like actually shifts into their other form. A lot of the times we just see they're already in their animalistic form. Is it explained later like how Soul Taken and Divers actually like work?
You're mostly just given hints, like, and a lot of it is people also talking like they think they know.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
I will say that they mostly have control over when they veer.
Okay.
But it also kind of depends on how animalistic they choose to be. Like there are some shapeshifters who are very animalistic, and they just kind of they go into beast mode and they never get out. If that makes sense.
Okay. So there are some where they just stay their animalistic form and don't shift back.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thanks.
So shall we move on to our next chapter?
Yes, this one's going to take a while.
Yeah. This one's got a lot of notes. Duiker, pretending to be native, watches a prophecy and leaves when he sees someone else watching him. Duiker follows him to the army compound. He then attends a meeting with Coltane, Culp, the last mage of the 7th Army, Bolt, a Wiccan of importance, and Malik Rel. Finally, Sormel Enath comes. He's a 10-year-old boy who is the reincarnation of a powerful warlock killed on Lassine's orders. Malik tells Coltane to march to Aaron to meet the High Fist. Coltane, speaking with Bolt, says, "Hell no." After the meeting, Duiker has a private meeting with Culp asking him to help rescue Heboric. Fiddler saves 2 girls from a pimp and is rewarded with a conch from some important spirit walker named Kimlock. The spirit walker wants to make a song of the bridge burners, and his magic is really powerful stuff. Fiddler turns him down. Kalam meets with the spy. In order to get across the desert, he takes the Book of Drijna and will deliver it to Shaik. Once Shaik has the book, it's said that she will begin the whirlwind apocalypse. Kalam is followed by Red Blades, natives working for the Empire who are way too zealous. Mappo and Ikariam are fighting and meeting lots of shapeshifters. They find a tower and meet Iskarel Pust. Iskarel Pust is crazy. Iskarel Pust is a priest of shadow. He also has a servant with a weird arm. Later, Ikariam said he's lost his memory and asks how Mappo got injuries. Mappo lies to him. So, that was quite the long summary. Who wants to start?
The conference with the new High Fist is the best scene in this chapter, hands
Agreed.
down. It's
Yep.
the equivalent of the dinner scene in the first book,
Mm-hmm.
but easier to read and understand.
That is true. Does anyone else love Bolt? Because I love Bolt.
Oh, he's awesome. Yeah. I also liked the conference scene. More imperial politics. And we get a peek behind the scenes of what Lazine, why Lazine is doing the things she does, which I really appreciate because before this, I thought Lazine was a 5-letter word that starts with a V. But after this, I thought less of that.
Can you expand more?
Yeah, what part about killing all the warlocks made you change your mind?
I mean, that's just standard, right?
God.
I actually had a
She-
question for the end of the episode that touches on what Ash is saying, but we could bring it up here depending on how expansive Ash gets.
So first of all, the Wiccans themselves are the ones that defend Lazine here, which speaks volumes. They make several important points. First of all, Kellenvid and Dancer were able conquerors, but were they able rulers? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know at this point, but it opens a door. It raises a question that maybe Lazine was justified in what she did to them. Because obviously it matters a great deal who is leading the empire. And then they discuss the suspicious circumstances under which all the Emperor's men disappeared. And they again raise questions on exactly what happened there. All of these people allegedly drowned, despite that being a laughable lie. But did Lazine kill them all, or did something else happen to them? Again, it's, it could go either way at this point. And basically, it raises a lot of it does a great deal to develop Lazine as a character, even off screen, and I like very much how that happens.
Yeah, when I was reading that part, I was like, fine. Erickson bring balance into it. Yeah.
Yeah, so
So the problem I have with this and many things about Lysine in both these first 6 chapters and this book as a whole is that it would be a lot more compelling if he didn't write this book called Gardens of the Moon, where Adjunct Lorne is like makes it pretty clear that getting rid of the old guard besides Dujek is on the Empress's priority list, and Lorne's like the right hand of the Empress in Gardens of the Moon. So that kind of makes me think that Bolt and Coltane are super naive about this, and maybe some of their observations are right, like about Kalimved maybe being a terrible ruler. I can't speak to that, but as far as like the old guard disappearing, kind of matches up with what Lorne was saying in Gardens of the Moon, and it makes this not as compelling as it otherwise would be if that book didn't exist.
I will say to that, first of all, Lysine has trust issues. For I would say good reasons, but we'll see later. She was the spy master of the Empire after all, and I think it is a mistake to say that Bolt and Coltane are naive.
I think you both make good points.
I said about this. I did not say they're naive in general. Just to be clear.
Not naive in general, but I think even in this, I think.
I'll have some thoughts at the end of the book. So, any other, I don't know, points, scenes, or characters?
Oh, so many.
Okay, Panda, take it.
Okay. So I like everybody else. I really enjoyed that scene with introduction of Bolt and Coltane, and the way that Dweeker just like cuts off Malik when Malik is just being such a butthole. And Malik was like going off on Bolt, and Dweeker's just like, before or after the High Fist's official welcome? And then it's immediately Malik's like reading off the script of like welcoming Coltane. I could see that scene so vividly in my mind, like if this ever gets adapted. Yeah. And then the scene with the Spirit Walker and Fiddler, that was very, very interesting. I actually have quite a bit to say, but I'll keep it short. One of the things is like Kimlock, he used to have a lot of cred being a ruler, but then he had to negotiate with the Malazan Empire, and he chose to be incorporated to save his people. And then people are like, oh, he's all talk, he has no power behind his words or whatever. And it's like, he saved your lives. Like, looking at what the Empire is capable of, with the nobles, like, so I have a lot of respect for Kimlock. And then the introduction of Iskarl, and his Pust, and his servant.
And the
I
mule.
really love it. And the mule. The servant and the mule may or may not be the same. I don't think they're the same. But we'll see. I really enjoy it. I know, the Iskarl comedic character is probably not for everyone, but personally for me, I appreciate him.
I've read Iskarl described as an unhelpful Krupp.
Yes.
Okay, that is true. That Iskarl makes Krupp seem sophisticated, which I didn't think was possible, but here we are.
In the fan battle between Iskarl and Krupp, I will choose Iskarl every day of the week.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I would love to have a conversation with them.
They're both great, but Krupp's better.
Uh-oh.
Going back to that scene with Bolt and Coltane, what I really liked about that scene, not only Malik Rel getting, like, I don't know, roasted, but how Coltane almost says nothing, and then Bolt is just speaking for
Yes.
Coltane the whole time. And then after Malik Rel leaves, and Dweeker's like, "Man, you might regret that." He's like, "I didn't say anything." That's what Coltane says.
Yeah.
I loved it.
which I did have a speculation based off of
Okay.
that scene. I think Bolt's gonna die, and I think it's gonna be Malik who kills him. And this could be like, it could, if this doesn't happen, it would be Erickson subverting my expectations.
I also want to point out with the scene with Kimlock is you're right. These people, I think they should be thankful that his decision saved them from slaughter. But remember that Seven Cities is kind of the way it is because of the slaughter at Aren. And do we
That's
know?
true.
Have we been told what happens at Aren, Jasnah?
We know that the Tlanimas slaughtered everyone in there.
Yeah.
And we know for the episode as a whole, we know why. Because it's a later chapter of the same episode that we're recording.
I don't think we figure out why.
Okay, so who?
We figure out
who.
Not even we figure out that it's a lot more complicated than the Emperor ordered the Imas in.
Okay, well, according to Cotillian's
Dancer.
Dancer's memories, Lacine gave the order for the slaughter.
He thinks that she did.
Okay, well, it came
There
off
was
as
no-
more confident than that, but
There's no order. Well, yeah, because he's also very paranoid, being a master assassin. But yeah, he has a grudge against Lazine, so that may be coloring his judgment. And also, there's no paper trail. No one was there when the order was given, essentially. And it was the Emperor who controlled the Tlanimas. It wasn't Lazine. So
The plot thickens.
the plot thickens.
It's so thick. Shall we move on to quotes?
Yes.
All right, so I want to start.
Okay.
Duiker left behind the close ring of ancient buildings and narrow alleys, surrounded the palace wall, coming to the Drijna colonnade that ran straight as a spear through Hisar's heart. That's a little foreshadowing. Drijna colonnade, a spear through Hisar's heart. Conquerors could overrun the city's walls, could kill every living soul within it, fill every estate and every house and every store with its own people, yet ruled nothing but the city's thin surface. The skin of the present and would one day be brought down by the spirits below until they themselves were but one monastery layer upon many. This is an enemy we could never defeat, Duiker believed. Yet history tells us stories of those who would challenge that enemy again and again. Perhaps victory is not achieved by overcoming the enemy, but by joining it, becoming one with it.
I have that same quote, and I actually so reading that, I had a very vivid thought in my head, and I could be way off base, but it reminded me of these very iconic lines. You think you own whatever land you land on. The earth is just a dead thing you can claim. But I know every rock and tree and creature has a life, has a spirit, has a name. You can own the earth, and still all you'll own is earth until you can paint with all the colors of the wind. By the great Alan Menken and Stephen Lawrence Schwartz. Those lines just came to me. Like, it was obviously Erickson put it in a very literary way, and the other way is very poetic. But it's like, it's land. Like, people are killing and dying for a piece of land, and that cycle just goes on and on and on. And there are so many examples in history. There are examples today. And it's just so, it makes my blood boil thinking, like, people, we're losing so much potential because of people's lust for owning land, basically, and want of power. So
You making a
yeah.
case for anarchy?
No, I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, no, I largely agree with the sentiment you bring to the table. The concept of ownership to me is a again, like a very philosophically interesting question that I have no good answer to. And when thinking about like issues like colonization, who has the right to the land, legacy, like cultural legacies and cultural scars, there are so many interesting avenues you could go down to, and very few of them lead to any definitive answers on what is the right thing.
Yeah.
I want to point out the prose in this book the whole way through really gives a feeling for the deep history of Seven Cities, and it's in everything that they have.
Yeah, just the mention of the layers of how many different layers there are. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's such a complicated and rich civilization that has been built by Erickson.
And a very rich ecosystem.
Yeah.
I have 2 more things to point out. So there's a prophecy, and I will say in that prophecy there's a lot of foreshadowing. And last, this quote from Mappo and Ikariam. Ikariam's frown deepened. Once again, he slowly whispered, I have lost time. Nothing of worth, friend. You would tell me otherwise? There was a look of desperate pleading in the Jag's gray eyes. Why would I not, Ikariam?
Oh,
Sad boys.
Yeah, their relationship is so tragic.
yeah. I mean, that was one of my questions is like, does Ikariam just black out when he rages?
Yes.
Okay. And then the question would be why?
Rightful.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Any other quotes that we like?
Yes. When Bolt is recalling the history that he has with Duiker, he says, I remember Dujak's sword that stole my beauty, even as my horse bit his arm, crushing bone. I remember that Dujek lost that arm to the surgeons, foul as it was with my horse's breath. Between us, I lost the exchange, for the loss of an arm did nothing to damage Dujak's glorious career, while the loss of my beauty left me with but the one wife that I already had. And was she not your sister, Bolt? She was, Coltane, and blind.
Ouch.
I almost shared that one. I like that one.
I really do love the humor in his writing. Yeah.
No book makes me laugh out loud more often than.
So that was my quote, but I had it extended a little farther. I'm sorry, Bolt. Although I was at the battle, I never saw Coltane nor you. In any case, I had not noticed any particular loss of beauty. The veteran nodded. One must look carefully. It's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great.
Panda, do you have any quotes?
Yeah, there was one about the bridge burners. The bridge burners are remembered here in Seven Cities, a name that is cursed, yet admired all the same. You were honorable soldiers fighting in a dishonorable war. And this is Kimlock to Fiddler. And I think it goes back to the topic that we had discussed with Gardens, agency, like the agency of characters. Like, and this is actually, I feel like this is a slippery slope topic, so I won't spend too much time on this one. The only thing I'll say is like, at what point should individuals be accountable for the actions that they've taken? And it's no longer excusable to say, I was following orders. Yeah.
Famous words.
Yeah, they had a whole set of trials around that in Nuremberg.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was another one which is much more lighthearted. It's the exchange between Iskarl and and his servant, and it's just so funny. Iskarl was like, "Call me by my title," and servant's like, "High Priest." Wrong. High Priest Iskarl Pust of the Tessum Temple of Shadow. Idiot! You are servant, which makes me master. Indeed. I'm sorry. I love that humor. if we're ready to move into questions, I have a few.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna start with a speculation. With Kimlock, because in your summary you did mention like Kimlock wanted to write a song about the bridge burners, and he wanted a memory from Fiddler, and Fiddler refused. Fiddler turned him down because Kimlock was like, "Oh, I need to touch you," right? My speculation is that Kimlock did get the memory from Fiddler because um there's a line, right? Captain Turka will see you out. He stepped close, meaning Kimlock, and laid a hand on Fiddler's shoulder. Kimlock Spirit Walker thanks you. And I think that's when he got the memory.
So my question was the touch on the shoulder enough? So have got one answer. What does everybody else think if they don't already know?
I'm not going to say.
Okay.
They can't say anything. It's just
I didn't
between
know
you and
if it
me.
came back up or not. So
Any other questions?
Um,
Excellent speculation.
yeah. Why did Fiddler turn down a chance at ascendancy? So along the lines, because it was about the whole, the song that Kimlock would have written could have maybe like brought all the bridge burners up to ascend.
I don't think he wants that kind of power. I think he doesn't think he is worthy of it, and he doesn't want to have to make the very tough decisions that Ascendants have to make.
now, look, if you were Fiddler, would you want to spend hundreds of years watching Picker pick his teeth?
Her teeth.
Her teeth, sorry. Her teeth. My bad.
Good question, but no. I mean, there are lots of other things Fiddler would have been able to do. Think about all the explosives that he would be able to play around with.
You should convince him. That would probably do it.
Yeah.
I just need Michael Bay to convince Fiddler.
It would for sure convince Hedge. I'm not sure about Fiddler.
Okay, good point.
So move on.
Okay, I did have another one. Servant. Servant has a weird arm. And I messaged you guys in the DMs, and I was like, I don't know if this is too crazy, but is Servant Dujek? Like, Dujek is in hiding. We don't know how long Servant has been with Iskarl. Iskarl? I'm sorry, everyone. I can't pronounce this guy's name.
There's no Pust.
Pust. But Pust sounds so bleh.
Yeah,
Anyway.
exactly.
So if Servant hasn't been with Pust for all that long, it could be Dujek, and somehow like there's magic that made his arm grow back. Maybe. And there was this line in somewhere about like Servant doing laundry and was like wringing water from the laundry and was like really happy about it. So I don't know.
Why do you think Dujek is in hiding?
Because Lacine, the things that happen in Garden. Huh?
Didn't he say? Didn't we last hear from him that he was still in Pale after being outlawed?
But I would think he would have fled.
It was several months ago.
With his whole army? Wasn't he supposed to try to meet with? I thought he was trying to meet with like Brood Raid Coalition when we last heard from him in the
Whiskey Jack
at the last phone call.
That
will ever happen apparently.
But things could have gone wrong. I don't know.
Okay,
I don't know.
just wanted to
Find out in book 3.
It's a very crazy out there, speculation.
All right, chapter 3. This one's a doozy. Felicin is in Skull Cup, where the slaves work. Since the prologue, she's been selling her body to save herself, Bowden, and Heboric. She's allied herself with Benneth, the head slave with lots of power. She vows vengeance against her sister for her bondage. Culp and Duiker watch the arrival of the Red Blades. The Red Blades want to slaughter the natives, but are stopped by the Wiccans who have infiltrated the market. The Red Blades leave to meet with Coltane. Culp has been helping train the army by making illusions of refugees. The army resents the Wiccans. Duiker says he'll try to get a day of rest. The next day in the mock battle, the army finally wins and earns a day of rest. Crocus and Fid are talking. Fid is angry Kalam is helping the rebellion. Crocus is angry they might rely on Apsalai for her assassin skills. Fid, Apsalar, and Crocus will take a different route. Kalam leaves in the morning. Fiddler pretends to be a Grawl leading two newlyweds on a pilgrimage. Moby leaves. Mappo has recovered from sickness thanks to Pust. Ikariam is in the library/kitchen/laundry room and remarking at the books and the frivolity of past empires. Mappo doesn't trust Pust. Mappo and Ikariam begin to search the temple. I guess I'll start. I like the library/kitchen/laundry room. It's funny.
Yeah, I like how Mappo asks if the dinner could be brought to the library, and Iskral's like, "That's so barbaric." Let me discover. Yeah.
And also being given directions by Pust.
Yeah, that was my quote. I'm just going to read it now.
Okay.
Where's the library? Turn right. Proceed 34 paces. Turn right again. 12 paces. Then through door on the right. 35 paces. Through archway on right. Another 11 paces. Turn right one last time. 15 paces. Enter the door on the right. Mappo stared at Iskral Pust. The high priest shifted nervously. Or, the Trell said, eyes narrowed, turn left 19 paces.
I love the meme that Hurin, you shared, that giant list of memes. The meme for this chapter was great.
Which one was that?
It's the one where it's like a map and then it's just like squiggle, squiggle, squiggle.
So yeah, we shared some funny stuff, but this chapter is kind of depressing, right?
Yes. Yes, let's talk about it.
So Felicin is drugged and she's being used and she's trying her hardest to help her companions. And her brain is so drug riddled that like she meets Pella, who's been trying to help her and trying to get to Heboric, and she just does not understand it at all.
Is she already drugged at that point?
She's not as hardcore as she is on chapter 3.
Yeah, to me, I didn't think
chapter 3.
Oh wait, sorry, the next chapter, whatever the.
It definitely gets worse, but yeah, she's definitely out of it, I think.
I think she's more out of it because of the trauma she's endured. I don't think it was the Durhang quite yet.
Yeah.
We can disagree on that.
I thought her reaction to Pella was her trying to hide her identity, of knowing too much, of knowing things that only maybe a noble would know. Yeah.
I read it as her just assuming he's another man that's going to use her. And, well, that's obviously a fair assumption because it's been true for,
Yes.
well, since the prologue.
And women.
And women. Yeah.
Yep.
Women are definitely not blameless. Obviously we have, like many of us know women who have been placed in situations where they're being exploited, and are in abusive relationships and stuff like that. And like, this is very hard for me to read, because of those reasons. But at the same time, I really appreciate how Erikson, again, doesn't pull the punches. He doesn't shy back, because people like this deserve to have their stories told. You deserve to know, like, because yeah, as he says later on, the discomfort you feel when reading this is nothing compared to what they feel. This is just the palest shadow of their pain, and I really appreciate being put in a situation where I can try and understand that more.
Mm-hmm.
And on a slightly different note, it was super sad when Felicin, first of all, she saved Saboric's life from dragging carts with rocks all day.
Yep.
And then in her conversation with him, in this episode, she suggests that maybe he should sleep with this woman who is interested in amputees, because she thinks it'll be good for him. And then he thinks she's mocking him. And then when she laughs, it comes out crueler than she intended it to. And it really speaks to the layers of, she's trying to build walls, but she's just so hurt she can't help but hurt people even when she's trying to help them.
Yeah, so my quote is actually from that scene where right after that, when she realizes that that they're planning stuff without her, and she's upset that she's excluded, and she thinks about how she's kept them alive and made their lives easier ever since the transport ship. And she says, Bula's right. Every man's a bastard, good enough only to be used. Very well. See for yourselves what Skullcup is for everyone else. I'm done with favors. I'll see you back on the carts, old man, I swear it. She found herself fighting tears, and knew she would do nothing of the sort. She needed Benneth, that was true enough, and she'd pay to keep him. But she needed Hiboric and Bowden as well, and a part of her clung to them as child to parents, denying the hardness that everywhere else filled her world. To lose that, to lose them, would be to lose everything. And I think that is like, that's really sad, but it like is also like even worse when you take into account in chapter 6 they were going to leave her behind and thought that she was enjoying herself here and like wanted to stay, and like how harsh and judgmental they are towards her through all this. So
Yeah, Hiboric and Bowden are not blameless at all. And
Yeah.
like Ash said, we probably all know somebody who's been in an abusive situation. For me, it was my uncle and several people in my church. And you just look at them, you're like, why are you doing this? Why are you with this person? And they still stay. And it's so hard to be on the outside. And when somebody is in that kind of situation, they often lash out at you, and you think, well, how dare you? I'm trying to help you. And like she's cruel to Hepwork sometimes, and he responds, I think, realistically. But their situation, I think, is very realistic to their characters. And yeah, I cried in this chapter. I have another quote to share. So you were talking that scene about how she wanted to make him smile. She said, "I'd hoped to make you smile, Hiboric," she wanted to explain, "and I didn't want my laughter to sound so hard. I'm not what you think I am I?"
yeah.
Fellison is very difficult for me to read because I am someone who absolutely hates being helpless. And I don't like reading characters who are helpless either. But I also acknowledge that life is not fair. Like, this world is not fair. People are cruel, and bad things happen. It's not just all about the good stuff. So I do appreciate the realisticness that Erickson writes this character with. And, we also see moments where she takes control as much as she can, as much as the situations that she's in allows for. And whether that's, some manipulation of Benneth, or, making sacrifices of herself to gain some benefit or reward for her and Bowden and Hiboric. She will, and she has that that fire in her where she's like, I am going to kill Tavor. When I see her next time, I am gonna kill her. So I'm hopeful. I'm cautiously hopeful that Fellison will have a moment to shine more.
Yeah, you said that she's trying her hardest to, get some sort of power, right?
Mhm.
And I think that even goes as far as to delude herself into thinking that what she's doing is her own choice. And
Mm,
you often see that with victims, and they say, well, if I say it's okay, or if I say I can do this, then it becomes okay, even just a
mhm.
little bit for them, when it's not okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely still not okay.
The last thing I will say about this is just reference another thing that she says or thinks to herself. I don't have the quote right here exactly, but it goes something like this. To turn pain into pleasure was simply a matter of will.
Oh, that hurts. Yeah. And something to go along with that is how she says to herself, survive each hour. It's not each day, it's just got to go hour by hour. I cannot imagine living like that.
So, shall we move away from Fellison?
For now.
Okay.
Yeah. My favorite scene in the chapter was the 7th earning Lancer support, thanks to Dorker and Culp fostering camaraderie and stick-to-itiveness from the army.
I had a thought about Culp. um, for anybody who's seen The Good Place and knows Janet, the character Janet, I just had a moment where I'm like, Culp is like Janet, just like conjuring refugees left and right. Janet's a character that can just make things appear. I can't say more spoilers, but anyway.
Truly a great show.
Mhm.
It got me interested in moral philosophy, which is something I
Mm,
don't think I'd ever say.
yep.
Yeah, what stood out in me in that scene was, I think, Dweeker saying he thought he saw Coltane give a small smile.
Yeah.
That was my other quote if you guys took my quote.
Oh. I don't have any
Mistaken, no
quotes.
doubt.
Hmm.
Um. Also, the little banter between Dweeker and Bolt, right? Because Dweeker's like, "Hey, Coltate called you uncle," and Bolt's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And then Dweeker calls him uncle. It's just like, I like the humor.
Yeah.
But there is actually something other. There is another sad thing that happened in this chapter,
Oh boy.
which um we got we got something that happened off screen, or off page, I should say, and we catch up with Fiddler and Kalam and Crocus after um Kalam and Fiddler had an argument, and you know um the argument was basically Kalam is like, I'm gonna go and give this book to, was it Shaik?
Shaik.
Shaik. And Fiddler's like, well, we're gonna go. Where are they going? Where are they trying to go?
Well, I guess I'll just say, so later on when they enter the whirlwind, right? They find the road, and Fiddler thinks, oh, this road might
Yeah,
lead to Tremolor, which is a legendary Zath house, and they hope that they could use that somehow.
Mhm.
right. Actually, now that I'm like speaking out loud, I'm like, I actually don't really know what Fiddler and Crocus and Absolar were gonna try to do, because Kalam was the one that was gonna kill Lysine, and they were supposed to be helping him to do that, but now Kalam is off on the side quest. I was like, so what are they doing? Anyway,
Doesn't Crocus kind of out what they're trying to do?
yeah. Yeah. Oh wait, what do you mean?
Doesn't he bring up the idea that Quickbin and Kalam probably thought of the fact that that Absolar might still have the rope skills
Like
and
to
be
use her assassin skills?
yeah. I don't know if it's in this chapter, but it's in the 6 we read. I've only read the first
Yeah.
paragraph of the next
It
chapter
was
so
this
far, so I
chapter.
know. Yeah.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
Crocus is angry because they're using Apslar, and Fiddler's like, Apslar is her own person, and she can make her own decisions.
Yeah.
You need to grow up, boy.
Yeah.
I have a question for you guys.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, can we wait till I share another quote?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
I actually have a quote So the quote is related to the scene that we just talked about Fiddler and Kalam fighting. There was pathos in that parting. Fiddler belatedly realized, for it seemed that the duty that once bound him and Kalam together to a single cause, which was as much friendship as anything else, had been sundered. And for the moment, at least, there was nothing to take its place within Fiddler. He was left feeling lost, more alone than he had been in years. And that part made me, because I mean, I moved around a lot as a kid. So my friendships, like, they were formed, and then after the school year is over, I moved away, and I never saw these people I met again. So I could relate a bit with how he's feeling, but also, like, it made me think about coming home from summer camp. Like, you had this intense bonding with a bunch of people, and then all of a sudden it's over. It's gone. You don't even know if you're going to see these people again. So yeah, it was very visceral to me, that feeling.
That's great. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I'll share my quote. No one's indispensable, nor should anyone be dismissed as useless. Short and poignant.
Damn
I
straight.
like it.
We should have that on a t-shirt.
Ashaman, hit it.
So Kalam decides he's going to take the book to Shaikh to help the rebellion. Yeah, what do you think about that? Okay, easy answer for me. I think Kalam is making the wrong decision here because I don't like bloody rebellions.
Oh, okay.
I understand why he's doing it, but I agree. I think it's the wrong decision. I think he could also be guided by ascendants, but that's all I'll say.
I've certainly been sympathetic to colonial revolutions, Battle of Algiers, yeah, but it does not seem like Kalam wants the whirlwind to be successful, or at least is conflicted about it. So probably delivering the MacGuffin of the entire revolution and this goddess of the apocalypse. That's not ominous. Is not a good move.
I feel like this is kind of a parallel to what Lacine was doing with having Lorne and Tool go free race. And it's like, you just went through a situation where this powerful tyrant was released into the world. You want to go and, like, release a powerful whirlwind into the world? Like, why?
Like, in a world of gods, I don't blame revolutionaries for seeking the help of gods and ascendants, but the one that's called the goddess of the apocalypse and is like a vengeful spirit is probably like not the most stable avenue to do this.
Hmm.
Any other
So
questions?
that's what I think. Yes, I have a speculation. So Haborik was explaining to Fellison about Autotoro dust. He was saying, those veins we dig, they're like a layer of once melted fat, a deep river of it sandwiched between layers of limestone. This whole island had to melt to make those veins. Whatever sorcery created Autotaro proved beyond controlling. I would not want to be responsible for unleashing such an event all over again. And my thinking was like, if Autotaro can lead to ascendancy, maybe, if Rallick, rubbing it all over his body and then ascends, then ascendancy could lead to Autotaro, maybe? Like, was there a major meltdown and a bunch of ascendants died? Or some special group of people died? I'm thinking like Pompeii style. So that's my question speculation.
That's great.
And then also, other question is, what happened in Mappo's past? Like, Erickson is such a tease. He's just like dripping all this hints, and it's like giving you even flashbacks from Mappo's past. within a scene that's happening, and it's like, I want to know, and I know you guys can't tell us or me, but I want to know. So
You'll find out a lot of it in the book.
in this book,
Mm.
okay, I hope so. I better.
Shall we move on to chapter 4? Okay. Fellison is growing more and more scarred physically, mentally, and emotionally. She's addicted to drugs and tries to feel anything, even if it's pain. She meets a guard Pella who is speaking cryptically and asks where Heboric is. Fellison is being used as a bargaining chip by Benneth. She learns that Bowden is a fugitive. Benneth suspects Fellison isn't who she says she is and beats her to within an inch of her life. She's saved by Heboric and even after longs to be next to Benneth. Kalam enters a town and escapes a storm. He gets a deck of dragons thrown at him, and weird stuff happens. We learn that Kalam has a symbol showing he's a claw master. The Red Blades Teni Beralta and Lostara Yale enter. After Kalam leaves, they kill everyone because they think they're in league with Kalam. Mappo and Ikariam explore the temple and find older ruins than the nunnery which existed before the Shadow Temple. They think that the Path of Hands converges here. Ikariam thinks he remembers something, and that scares Mappo. He wishes he didn't have to lie to his friend. They go upstairs and get lots of nonsense from Pust, and Pust tells them to find his broom. Sormo Inath does a ritual and pulls Bolt, Duiker, and Kulp into a warren, where there is a giant battle with shapeshifters. They're saved by a demon, and Kulp punching Sormo. So, favorite scenes?
Ikariam and Mappo going to find Iskarl's broom.
That was
You
my favorite
tet
quote.
mine.
I mean, this chapter was fairly short.
Mm.
So
Shall I read the quote?
do it.
Well, that was fruitless. What shall we do now, friend? Ikariam looks surprised. It should be obvious, Mappo. We must take on this perilous quest. We must find Iskrul Pust's broom.
I love that quote. It was almost mine. I have a different Iskarl Pus quote though. Is Ashaman what's your favorite scene?
Well, okay, my favorite bit from this, I don't really have a favorite scene. They're all fine. Nothing really stands out to me. I love the history of the temple. I love that there were just a bunch of horny nuns cloistered up together, and they have a bunch of dirty books in the library.
Don't forget, beneath the nunnery, there's even more. And I bet beneath that, there's even more.
Oh my god.
So,
That is funny.
I'll share my other favorite quote. You're numb, girl, Heboric said, one of the few times he'd addressed her. Yet your thirst for feeling grows, until even pain will do. But you're looking in the wrong places.
Yeah. That's my
Mhm.
least favorite scene.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can understand that. Hard to put it on a favorite scene list.
Yeah. Yeah, again, like this is something that people who are abused tend to do.
Yeah.
Especially people who have been abused sexually. Um, there tend to be two ends of the spectrum. One end, they can't handle the thought of sex at all, and on the other hand, like they become somewhat addicted to it, even though they're not. It's not enjoyable for them. And man, I know people like that, and that it's a heart wrenching to see. Although happily, um, the people who have been affected by that in my life are now doing better, and they have
Good.
grown and healed. Hey guys, Ashaman interjecting here to make a correction. Survivors of sexual abuse, assault, or rape do not in fact fall into two neat camps in terms of the effect on their sexuality. Rather, the possible responses are many and will vary with each survivor. There is no quote unquote normal response in this department. To any survivors listening in, I wish you the best in your healing process. We're all rooting for you. For more information on this topic, check out rain.org. We'll put the link in the show notes. Anyways, back to the show.
Yes, and I think you had a Iskarl Plus. No. Ikariam and Mappo quote.
I do not. I have an
just
Iskarl Pust quote.
Oh, okay, sorry, go
And I
ahead.
was about to ask if we're doing the quotes yet. So Iskaral Puss tells them that that he had a staring contest with the Bokarala, who he insists are like completely nefarious and idiotic. And it says Mappo glanced at Akarium, then cleared his throat. And who, Iskaral Puss, won this battle of wits? Iskaral Puss fixed a pointed stare on Mappo. Look upon him who does not waver from his cause, no matter how insipid and ultimately irrelevant, and you shall find in him the meaning of dull-witted. The Bokaral could have stared into my eyes forever, for there was no intelligence behind them. Behind his eyes, I mean. It was proof of my superiority that I found distraction elsewhere. So we lost the staring contest that he's bragging about with these like winged monkeys.
I also like to point out that he had been doing it for about like 4 hours, I think.
And then my question just flows immediately from this. And probably, well, anyway, I think we should ask this question once per episode. Is Iskaral Puss a complete imbecile, or is he a cunning and intelligent manipulator?
So this is why I like Iskaral more than, well, it's one of the reasons why I like Krupp. Because Krupp, you know that he has something going on behind the scenes. It's established pretty clearly. Iskaral, you have no idea. He's just a being of pure chaos.
I think those two choices aren't mutually exclusive.
Yes, that's a good answer. But we should still ask it every episode because I want to see how people's opinions of them change over time.
I was just thinking of which Muppet could play Iskaral Puss.
Is it because I read it in another Muppet voice?
No, it didn't resemble any Muppets that I knew, but I was thinking maybe Animal or Crazy Harry.
Oh, Animal, yeah, for sure.
So, do we have any questions for the chapter?
I have a quote.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I have a quote. Go ahead.
Wise words are like arrows flung at your forehead. What do? Why, you duck, of course.
Bolt.
Yep. Mine is just simply, you damn book grub. It's a great insult.
Any questions?
Yes.
Of course.
Of course. Okay. The Talon Amos. So I think it was Dweeker to Sormo. He says, the undead warriors have turned their backs on the Empress and all that is the Empire ever since the Emperor's assassination. And my question is, but what about Tool? Like, Tool is Talon Amos, and he helped Lorne with the unleashing of Race. Like, to me, that's kind of conflicting.
Yeah, I've always wondered why Tool helped her when the Emos are not with Lucine.
I think it's because it had a jacket in the picture, and the Talanimas are sworn to destroy any jacket they find.
I agree. I think they weren't satisfied with just having a Jaghut sleep forever. They needed to kill it.
I will accept that explanation.
That's just my thoughts. I don't know if it's definitive.
My second question is, why did the Black Demon help Dweeker and the crew in the...
That's what I was going to ask.
Okay. Yeah, in the whole... Which is like, that scene with Sormo opening the Warren, I think we should talk about a little bit. Like, we were kind of chatting in the Erickson channel. Was it Sormo opened he opened the Talon Warren, and all of a sudden, like, they all went into the Warren with him?
Sormo did a ritual, and in this ritual, he opened up the Talon Warren, and they're all pulled inside. During this time, there's a giant, convergence of shapeshifters happening, and they're fighting. And you introduce some new people there. They start to attack them. Then a demon comes and saves the crew. It was crazy stuff.
I think the demon saved them because the demon was just a good guy. Hashtag not all demons.
I don't buy it.
It
Yeah.
It seems to me, based on the sighting of the demons in the desert earlier on in the book, and then this demon here, that there are some demons that are pursuing the path of hands. So maybe he was just like, oh, well, if I help them fight these soul taken divers, less soul taken divers for me to compete with. That's kind of my take on it.
The question is, will we find out?
I will say that I am 90% sure I know who it is, but it's never spelled out definitively.
Okay. And we think that Warrenception can happen?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. A Warren within a Warren.
Well, warrens are basically just other places,
Mhm.
and you can use you can use sorcery to go from one place to another sometimes.
Mhm.
So that's what happened there.
Okay.
Oh, chapter 5.
Chapter 5.
Okay. Crocus, Fiddler, and Apsalar arrive at a city. The city has already started the slaughter of Malazans. The three think they need to enter the city quickly or they will be caught. They learn definitely that Apsalar is possessed by Dancer, who is also Cotillion. They get into the city. It is Fubar. The three kill a group of men chasing a girl. They make it through the horrific scene and are reunited with Moby on the other side of the city. Kalam delivers the tome to Shaik. She has two bodyguards, a giant Tublakai and Leomin. He is allowed to leave, but Shaik sends with him an Aptorian demon, who was once Shadow Thrones. Shaik opens the book and is killed immediately by the Red Blades. The Red Blades retreat, and the bodyguards don't know what to do. She said she'd be renewed, so they wait. So, that ending was crazy, right?
Did you guys expect it when you were reading it the first time?
No, I was like,
Not at
wait,
all.
the prophesied savior is dead? What
Yeah.
happens now?
Took me by
Yeah.
surprise.
And it was a bolt through the head, and like it's pretty.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You
she's
get brain
dead.
matter.
Yeah.
But it was perfectly like built up to and foreshadowed. Like they were following the whole time,
That's
you know.
true.
Mhm.
And it was brought up like multiple times that they were following and killing people, and like, what else were they going to do? So it was both surprising and what else could have happened.
Right.
The Toblik guy was cool.
Yeah.
Gigantic guy who could literally pick up Callum off of his horse and pull him down. He's got a tattoo of a shattered uh, glass on his face.
And he has a wooden sword.
Wooden sword, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't need a not wooden sword. You know?
Well, the
That's-
sword is ironwood, so it is good wood at least.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, he also could just kill them with his bare hands.
Yeah. The scene that stood out to me the most was when Fiddler figured out that Amonis is Shadow Throne. Oh, sorry. Emperor
Kalinved.
Kalinved, yes, is Amonis, and Dancer is Cotillion. And I was so happy when I read that, because I was like, I knew something was up with Dancer and the Emperor. Looking back at Gardens chapter 24, where Corlott said, there is precedence that Azeth choose their own. It was so with the Deadhouse. Two men were chosen, one who would be emperor, the other would accompany him, Kalinved and Dancer.
I was just gonna say it actually. It tells you before that in Gardens. It's a little more oblique than the one you just read, but it's when Tattersall is in council with the bridge burners. They talk about it.
I'd just like to share that quote to make everyone who didn't notice, including all of us here, I'm sure, to feel stupid. Kalam's gaze was veiled. Odd, isn't it, after all? The Warren only appeared following the Emperor's assassination at Lassine's hand. Shadowthrone and his companion, the patron of assassins, Cotillion, were unheard of before Kellened, Ved, and Dancer's deaths. It also seems that whatever disagreement there is between how Shadow and Empress Lassine is personal. And
Mhm.
then Tattersall says, It's that obvious, isn't it?
Yep. But I did catch it the first time because at this point in the book, the first time I was reading it, I was beating my head against this narrative, trying to like figure it out, and I reread that
Aren't
little
you
segment
special?
multiple times. But it was only because I was so frustrated trying to figure everything out, and I was like, "What? How does this all fit? Why don't I understand it yet?" Because I'm used to like Robert Jordan holding my hand at that point. So
I mean, when you're reading that for the first time, like that early in Gardens, I was not even sure what a warren was.
I was like looking at the glossary too, and going back to the cast of like I was like really being like, "Why don't I get this?" You know. So
Yeah. Anyway, but I feel like this revelation does kind of give credence to what Yesna, you had mentioned in one of our Gardens episode where you were like, you think Relic is gonna ascend, and I think this gives credence to your speculation because he did enter the Azith, which then would be like, so does Vorkin also ascend? I don't know.
maybe both, maybe neither.
Yeah, I know.
No idea. I really loved Fiddler impersonating a Grawl and Absalar playing the part of a spoiled pregnant bride who will curse those who spoil her marital bliss. And Fiddler has the best curses when he's imitating the Grawl. I'm
He
just
does.
gonna run through my favorite lines as part of the favorite scene. Just kill it all. He says, "Foul snot of rabid dogs, anal crust of dysenteried goats. Such a sight for two young newlyweds to witness. Will you curse their marriage but 2 weeks since the blessed day? Shall I loose the fleas on my head to rend your worthless flesh from your jelly bones?" And I was like, man, you know how to curse. That's awesome. I also like the Gardens of the Moon reference when Fiddler is waiting for the soldiers to arrive and he sees it says, "Ah," he breathed when he came close and saw their slashed open crotches. That's the last I know.
Oh yeah. Oh my god. Sorry. I had okay. So Fiddler, bless him. Don't fall in love with this woman, Fid, old friend, else you loosen your guard of the lad's life and call it an accident of fate. And he's talking about Absalar. And I'm just like, do you guys know what I'm gonna say?
Creepy?
WTF, is this insta love? Like, is Fiddler
No, don't worry.
was he drawn to Sori when she was the scary possessed character already? And like, where is this coming from?
Isn't he just giving Crocus advice?
No, this is his internal monologue.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think he just sees Absalar, and she's just so competent and good at, tricking those tribesmen and stuff. She's like, oh my god, you gotta get me one of those. It helps that she's really pretty as well,
Oh my
Yeah,
god.
he's
Okay.
noted how attractive she is a few times, even in the first chapter when she just
Yeah.
looks up and smiles.
All this stuff passed right over my head.
Anyway, I hope this is not a major plot point. That's all.
Okay.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. I did have one more thing.
Go
Um
ahead.
so Kalam, he's like crossing the Raraku desert again. There's a part where it says, as the wind and sun did to the sand and stone, Raraku shaped all who had known it. Crossing it had etched the souls of the 3 companies that would come to be called the Bridge Burners. We could imagine no other name. Raraku burned our pasts away, making all that came before a trail of ashes. That made me think that the Bridge Burners were not that different from Adjunct Lorne or Tavor. Like, they had to let go of who they were before their pasts. They only had the Bridge Burners. They only had each other and could only move forward. I think the main difference is that the Bridge Burners they were comrades, so they had each other to relate to, whereas the adjunct is completely alone and is really just acting on behalf of the Empress. And I think that's interesting to think about how the similarities that they have, yet the different outcomes. And to me, the main difference is that they had each other. The bridge burners had each other.
Because they didn't have power.
Well,
One of the themes of the book is the isolation of people at the heads of the institution.
some of them have power.
Yeah, Whiskey Jack was pretty powerful, right?
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and Quick Ben.
Oh yes, and Quickben.
Yeah.
So the revelation that they ascended did bring with it, like, the way that it was revealed, even though I knew before this that they ascended through the Deadhouse. I'm just wondering, like do you guys think this means that Surly, like, because in book one I didn't, I thought, oh, maybe she assassinated them and then they ascended, but in this it makes it seem like they did it on purpose, and it wasn't that she assassinated them at all. So it makes me wonder, like, were they fleeing her, trying to take them out when they ascended, or was their plan to ascend and then as Shadow Throne control the Empire, and she usurped them because she didn't want Shadow Throne on the throne, or, like, and if none of those, like, if she didn't take them out and she didn't usurp them, they just kind of abandoned the Empire to become gods. Why the hell do they have so much beef with her? I just don't know.
There is something there, because so if we think back to the Azeth, what we had discussed before, like the Azeth is like a safety mechanism in this magical world. If Dancer and Kellenved like went into an Azeth house, there must have been something that triggered that Azeth to appear.
It was already there.
It was already, but why?
They're just as at places.
Yeah.
Because
It what?
long time ago, it was there
For
to
reasons,
be a safety
yeah.
mechanism.
For reasons
don't
that
know.
aren't related to the narrative, basically.
Never mind.
Some places have Azath.
Hmm.
That's not satisfying. Okay. I don't know the answer to your question. Yes, no.
And I'm sure they do, and they won't tell us.
Maybe.
I just like looking mysterious.
Sometimes when you guys ask questions, Ashaman and I know most of the answer. Would you agree with
Okay.
that?
Yes.
Yeah. But a lot of it's still we're figuring out ourselves. Shall we move on to the next chapter?
Yes.
I'm ready.
Yes.
All right.
The last one.
The last one. Yeah, we're into book 2 now.
Woohoo.
Yay. Fellison is drugged all the time. Bowden has been missing for 6 days. Benneth suspects Fellison. There's a rebellion going on. Benneth is attacked, but Fellison gets away. She's saved by Pella, who has been tasked with breaking Heboric out. Heboric decides to take Fellison with him. Fellison won't leave without Benneth, so Bowden goes to find him. Heboric and Fellison go to the lake. The plan is to escape through caves underwater and trekking across the desert. They're suddenly attacked by blood flies. Bowden comes back and says Benneth is dead. They go to the cave and look south. The whirlwind apocalypse has begun. Culp and Duiker are on the coast looking for a boat. In a tavern, they find Marines who have a boat, but they are attacked. Duiker leaves by horse to meet with Coltane, but Culp leaves on the boat. He enlists the help of the Marines to save Heboric. The Marines are happy to help a priest of Venner to whom they're sworn. Duiker arrives at Hisar and learns that the Malazan army has escaped with refugees. He's conscripted into the army of the apocalypse chasing Coltane. Mappo and Akarium find the broom and a boat. They return the broom to Pust. Pust does a reading and says that Shaik is dead and they must leave. Fiddler and co. are running from Grawl and enter the whirlwind. They find an ancient road, and Fid hopes it leads to a legendary Azath house. Fid kills the Grawl with Boom Boom. Kalam is traveling with Apt. He thinks of his conflicting loyalties. They're attacked by shapeshifters, but survived. Whew, this was a long chapter.
Sure
Mhm.
is.
The one that stood out most to me was the bloodfly attack.
Ugh. Ugh.
And it's a thing of nightmares, and especially
Mhm.
the way that Erickson writes it, and it's just like vomit-inducing how disgusting and gross and terrible it is. But the most tragic part to me is so Felison, she only gets all of those injuries because she covers Hebwork in the mud first, and she's covering the mud on this handless man, and he says, "No, girl, cover yourself first." And she says, "Once I'm done with you," and suddenly the blood flies attack, and Hibork doesn't get any attacks because his tattoos save him. But
Yeah.
even though this terrible things happen, she still thinks about Hibork first.
This is what happens when the DM doesn't tell you that your magical tattoos protect you from insect bites.
Yeah, that's probably what happened.
Well, he didn't know that that's what would happen either, right? And it's kind of flipped as well because Haborg warned her first and told her like cover yourself in mud. And she did start, and then she was like, "Okay, I think I've got enough. Let me help you." But she didn't cover herself enough, which actually I don't know. I think the mud itself like lessened how much she got injured. I don't think it would have completely prevented it. But what I will say is Erickson a horror fan?
I don't
Must
know.
be.
I think Ice or ENCS is more because his stuff are more issue.
Okay. I am not a horror fan, so reading that scene was, ugh. Ugh. I don't have words right now.
Even as a horror fan, like a lot of horror scenes that are this grotesque are like exaggerated to the point where they're hilarious. This is not
Okay.
funny. It was painful.
Oh
So
man, so painful. I mean, and just okay. So the flies themselves are scary enough, right? Like, because they don't care. They're just like attacking you, and it's
Go through
painful
the
that they're
water.
attacking you. He takes another step, right? Where it's like inserting poison and bug eggs, and then he takes it another step, which is the incubation period is so short, and it's
yeah.
like, oh,
She gets them in her mouth.
okay, I can't think about it anymore.
Yeah, and the reason they were swarming like that was because of all the fires of the rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the scene that stood out to me, besides that one, was Duiker going all spy detective, trying to figure out if the Seventh had been destroyed and if Coltane still lived, and just being awesome at pretending to be a native and on the side of the rebellion once again.
How you
Do
do,
you
fellow Seven Cities natives.
Do you
That works.
remember back in whatever chapter 2, I think, where they had that conference and Coltane is like trying to convince Dweeker to be a spy? And Dweeker's
Yep.
like, no, I am not a spy, I'm a
And he
historian.
calls him out and is like, then what were you just doing?
Right.
He
Yeah.
had just done spy stuff like right before that.
And now look where Dweeker is.
Oh, and also, sorry, real quick, right before that, having within 10 pages, Culp and Duiker both soil themselves when they're a victim of a magical explosion. That is the kind of realism to magic use that you don't get in many other fantasy books.
I like the scene where they go to the tavern and the tavern's attacked, and the back and forth between the Marines.
And then we find out the Marines are disciples of Feanor.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Quelle coincidence.
Yeah, how convenient.
How divine intervention.
Yeah, this Fenner guy, I don't know.
So, any characters or scenes?
Mine was also the Dweeker going through Hisar and piecing together what happened.
I think here in like what you were saying before, how this book, at least in the first 6 chapters, like there's a consistency in the darkness of the tone. Yeah, it's like you come up against, dead people because of rebellion, and then those mutineers get killed, and there's more dead bodies, and it's just like on and on and on.
And the descriptions really resemble like accounts I've read of like the rape of Nanking, which is not fun to read.
No.
Gotcha. No. On a more lighthearted note, we'll get back to the more heavy-hearted, but on a lighthearted note,
Thank you.
one of my favorite scenes was Mappo and Ikarium finding a boat in the middle of the basement thing. I don't know. And Mappo just goes, "Truly, I should have anticipated moments like these. What was I thinking?" And I thought, as a reader, I thought that was pretty funny because that's how I feel. It's just like, sure, why not? They find a boat.
Speaking of hilarious lines about boats, my favorite quote from this is when Culp says, "And what did you pay for this boat?" And the historian glances up at the mage and says, "Can you not repair it? What was your warrant again, Culp?" And Culp says, "Boat repair."
I had that one
Point
too.
taken.
It's a neat one.
Okay, I'll share my funny quote as well. So this is the tavern keeper yelling at the Marines. "The tab, Mesla. 2 weeks now, 72 jacatas. What's your white life worth?" Gessler asked, gesturing to Truth to join the sailors as they slipped through the break in the rear wall. The barman's eyes went wide, and then he ducked his head. 72 jacatas, Mesla? About right, the corporal nodded.
I love Stormy and Gessler.
Yeah, me too. I have more quotes, but they're a little
Oh, one
heavy.
thing. I do appreciate how Dweeker is quite literally in this chapter a ride or die homie.
Yeah, and that sequence, I'll presage Hurin's dark heavy quotes with just an observation that because I stopped a previous reread after Deadhouse Gates, I thought that Malazan was grimdark, and going through it this third time, I do see like the best of grimdark in Deadhouse Gates, because like grimdark at its best is like a critique of the ideology of war and the ideology of class warfare and revolution and the ideology of like class oppression and all of these things, and critiquing it by depicting it like in a very exaggeratedly brutal fashion, and like not pulling the punches and kind of like peeling away the ideologies that justify a lot of these things. And like this chapter kind of showcases that, like, even if Malazan is not grimdark, like he's taking some of the best elements of grimdark here and using them, and it works. I like it. So let's hear your quotes, Kieran.
This is from Fellison's internal monologue. "Surviving this is all that counts. Let Tavor see all the scars she's given me. The day we come face to face, I need say nothing then to justify my revenge."
Yep. Hold on to that fire.
I like this quote because it really speaks to how when someone is hurting, sometimes what they want most is for someone to understand their pain.
Yep.
And this is what Fellison really wants from Tavor. I don't think revenge is as important to her. She just wants her to understand how badly she has hurt her.
She wants to be seen by Tavor, the consequences. And when I say hold on to that fire, is I feel like that is really what's keeping her going. Because otherwise, I think it would be pretty easy for her to say, "I give up."
Mm-hmm.
My second quote. Duiker viewed all he saw with a growing numbness. The terrible agony that had been unleashed here seemed to remain coiled in the air, poised, ready to snatch at his sanity. In self-defense, his soul withdrew, deeper and ever deeper. His power to observe remained, however, detached completely from his feelings. The release would come later. The historian well knew the shaking limbs, the nightmares, the slow scarification of his faith. And I think this is an attack on the idea that people should be impartial observers, and that when you see something terrible like what's happening, it's impossible to look at it detached. You might try, but in doing so, you kind of lose your humanity.
Right. Like, how can you not be affected by something so extreme?
Mhm. Yeah. When I first read this book, I was actually rooting for the rebellion at first. I deeply disliked the Empire based on what had happened in Gardens of the Moon, and I
Mhm.
disliked Lazine as well. But seeing the actual consequences of this rebellion, it didn't change my mind right away, but it's horrifying to read these scenes, and that makes you rethink what you previously believed. I think, as you said, like Malazan makes you uncomfortable, and that's a place where you can actually grow as a person.
Mhm.
You don't generally grow from a place of comfort. It has to be forced upon us generally.
I mean, you can grow width-wise, but not depth-wise.
Yeah. There's a quote here somewhere where Duiker talks about how it's probably like right next to what you just read here, and he talks about like how freedom has come at the cost of all else. And I think that that really shows like how basing your rebellion around Drajna and the apocalypse is like. So I have a friend. He's a doctor uh, of like economics or something. I don't know what his doctorate is particularly, but Dr. Haikoku, and he speaks every week in the park in Hyde Park. He's a revolutionary, but in one of his speeches, he said he was talking about like how can we make a more efficient society that's like better for everyone. And he says, well, after all, like what's the point of making a revolution if you don't make the world better? And this seems like all they're thinking about is driving out the Mesla, the apocalypse, vengeance, etc. And it where's the ends here besides just like get the Meslas off our back? But then what? You've torn everything apart, you know?
The term that comes to mind for me is death cult.
Right, right, and that's all it is. If there's no like positive content, there has to be like an alternative,
Mm-hmm.
and if there's not, there's no point.
Just land. That's it.
Do we have any other quotes?
Yeah. So, okay, we're going down a even darker path
God.
here.
Even darker. Wow.
Breaths were held, including a pitiless hand clamped down over the dying sailor's mouth until the man's moaning ceased. And that's from when Culp is on the boat with the Marines, and there is a mage on the shore trying to figure out where they are and kill them. And there's just this one Marine who, even as he's dying, he can't get relief from even being able to just scream out his pain. And the it evoked in me just like obviously I have never fought in World War II, so I cannot speak from experience. But from like whether it's movies, documentaries, or other historical texts that I've read, just like what the soldiers had to go through, and at times you have to make a sacrifice of your comrade to be able to save yourself and the others that are still alive, and it tears at me. I Having to put people in those positions, like, that makes me so angry. Another part is where Fiddler and Crocus and Apsalar went into Hissar, and they saw the aftermath of what happened there. It's described as men had been gutted, their entrails pulled out, wrapped around women, wives and mothers and aunts and sisters, who had been raped before being strangled with the intestinal ropes. The historian saw children with their skulls crushed, babies spitted on tapu skewers. However, many young daughters had been taken by the attackers as they plunged deeper into the district. If anything, their fates would be more horrific than those visited on their kin. And just in that section, it just breaks my heart over and over again. And Erickson writes it so succinctly and so effectively. And I'm just like, where do you come up with these scenes, dude? Like,
Reading history.
oh, yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
guess.
specifically what I was talking about when I was invoking scenes of the rape of Nanking.
Yeah.
I'd also like to point out that I really appreciate how Erickson doesn't he doesn't write it indulgently.
Right.
He tells you exactly as much as you need to understand the scene, and then he moves on. I've seen some people criticize Erickson for like indulging in violence, but like no, he doesn't. This is you can see that he's just as horrible as we are reading it, perhaps more so. Like he doesn't get some kind of sick pleasure out of making scenes like this. He just wants to tell the story that he feels like he needs to tell.
Didn't he write an essay in response to those criticisms?
Yes.
Okay.
You should not read it until book 9, though.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. I just, yeah, I knew he wrote something. I haven't read it though. On a bittersweet, I guess, note, something about Fiddler. Despite himself, Fiddler's heart broke for those Grawl horses even as he aimed and fired. And I think this is to your point, Ash, where it's like, we read some really gruesome scenes, but here Erickson writes so that his characters acknowledge the sadness of killing horses or like of killing innocents.
And it's more effective because he's bonded with his Grawl horse over the
Mhm.
past few chapters as well. And
Yep.
yeah, it's like I as a reader really like the horse he rides, so it affected me more powerfully as well, just knowing that these are horses just like that horse. They have,
He had a good horse.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it maims people who ask too many questions.
or insult it.
Right.
Speaking of bonds, I really like the bond that was forming between Apt and Kalam.
Oh my goodness. He nicknamed the demon. Okay, so therefore Bond,
The
yes.
cutest thing in this chapter is a demon.
A scary demon. The thing's frightening.
Oh my
It has 3
God.
legs. Just imagine how funny it would be to watch it.
Shall we move on to questions?
Yeah, and listener questions. Because we're at
Yeah,
the end.
we're very late. I'll start with my questions. Which storyline did you enjoy the most and least? I will start. I enjoyed Felison's story the most, and I didn't enjoy Mappo and Akarium so far the least. But I still liked it. So. Panda.
I'm the opposite of you. I don't enjoy Felison's storyline. I appreciate it, but I cannot say that I enjoy reading it.
That's fair. I agree. And the least? Oh, I mean the most.
I do love. Okay, starting out, I wasn't as much of a fan of Ikariam and Mappo, but they've grown on me. And I guess maybe we'll see because this is a later development. I want to see what happens with Kalam and this demon with Apt.
Ashaman, same question.
I liked Dewicker's stuff, and I liked Ikariam and Mappo the least, although, as you said, I still liked it.
Jasnah.
I like Duiker and Coltane's. I mean, Coltane's are through Duiker, but Duiker and the Wiccans, their camaraderie, and all of Duiker's sequences. I love that there are two historian main characters in this book, and the situation with the Wiccans is great to read. I do have a lot of compassion for Felison, though. I probably least enjoy either Mappo Akarium or Fiddler and the crew, but I still like them.
So, next question. Good. I'll do the one from Lady Sweden first. This one's for Jasnah. I'd like spoiler-free version of what Jasnah thought of the book his first time through, and what has changed for the second read.
I hated this book the first time I read it. I felt miserable reading it. It felt like just a long slog through sadness and tragedy, and I thought that I was reading Grimdark, and it felt like it, and it felt way too heavy-handed, and I didn't get Erikson's humor as much yet, so I didn't think there was enough levity or contrast. And basically the opposite of that for second and third read. For the second read, for the first read, I hated Felison. Second read, I have a lot of compassion for. I just don't think I understood Malazan the first time I read these first two books, and when I reread it with a better understanding of Malazan, I love it, and I see the compassion, I see the levity, I see the humor, I see the hope, as well as the dark stuff. Go ahead.
I would also like to share my first time through Deadhouse Gates. I really, 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 really liked it for the really hand in the air yes moments that come later. And I kind of just brushed over all of the dark stuff without really thinking about it too deeply. And I hated Felison. I thought she was annoying and spoiled brat, and I hated her. But the second time on my first reread, I had changed as a person, and I could feel nothing but sympathy for her. And yeah, that's how I changed. Ashaman?
So first read, I was in grade 10. I was
my god.
I was not maturely. I was not developed enough to appreciate the story in its full awesomeness. I didn't hate Felison, but I didn't feel as sorry for her as I do now. I didn't feel for her as much, and well, I liked the book for its epic moments, its cool battles. Yes, there will be cool battles. But now I read it and I basically everything about it. I feel like I can see what Erikson is doing, and I don't know. I've as Hurin did. I've grown immensely as a person since grade 10, thankfully. And now it hits differently. It hits harder.
It was only like 4 years for me, and I still like totally different reaction.
Next question.
Yeah.
Red Army Ian asks, now that we are following a new set of characters in a different location, which new characters do you think will be around through most of the series from this point on? Which characters do you think are going to grow attached to? Also, which characters from the first book do you think will show up in the book at some point? I guess this is for Panda.
Oh, right. Okay. I'm gonna guess that. Well, okay. Let me read this. Okay, so the new characters that I think that will be around for most of the series. I think honestly, I have a hard time answering this because any of these characters could die at any point. Like, Erikson's just not a writer who is afraid to kill off, a character that's integral to a story, to a plot line. So I don't know. If I had to guess, maybe Dweeker and Mappo. I think those two I could see staying on the series. Which characters do I think I'm going to get attached to? I mean, I'm I'm already attached to Fiddler and that crew. From the new characters, probably Mappo and Ikariam. And which characters from the first book do I think will still show up at some point? I'm going to guess that Whiskey Jack and crew will show up at some point, probably towards the end, or Dujek. Yep.
Great. Lammy Lambs asks, what's the deal with all the new characters and settings? We just started getting to know all the other people. I think Jasnah, can you take it?
So Erickson lost his copy of Memories of Ice that he had been working on and was too frustrated to restart it immediately, so he wrote this book. That's the answer.
I don't think that's the only answer, and I think I will agree with what Ashaman's going to say. So, Ashaman, do you want to explain it?
I think he did it because he needed to tell the story he wanted to tell. And well, okay, it works better in the context of the series, I think. So this happens once more in the 5th book. It's not really a spoiler to say that. He likes putting you in new situations with new people and getting you to at least sympathize with them. So a lot of people say this is a flaw with this. I don't agree. I think it's just the way that he had to do it in order to write the story he wanted to write.
I would say that I'm much happier this way because it sets expectations. So if we followed the same cast of characters for book 1 and book 2, and then we follow another set of characters for like book 3 and book 4, and then we set another cast, I'm glad that it's kind of sectionalized like it is.
He weaves it together.
Yeah, I don't mind it. At first I was like, okay, I need to do this all over again, learn who these characters are, right? Go through that period. But because there are familiar characters as well, it helps keep that continuity from the first book. But there's also like new stuff for me to figure out and puzzle out.
And this book also gets you into the characters so much faster than Gardens of the Moon. I didn't feel like as like stumbling and blind as I did at the beginning of Gardens.
That's interesting because to me the pacing of Deadhouse after the prologue I felt like was pretty slow because he was doing a lot of setup with like Ikariam and Mappo. And with Gardens, it was pretty much like boom, boom, boom. I mean, you had that
Right,
giant
but it was
battle.
too fast for me to figure out what was going on or who everybody was and get attached to people. That's because
Gotcha.
it's slower. It's easier.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Okay. Next question. Favorite new characters, since there are a lot of them. I will start. I love Mappo Ikariam and Escadrille Pust and Bolt and Coltane and Duiker and Gessler and Stormy.
So you like all of them.
Well, I mean, I don't like Felison. I mean, her story is my favorite.
But that's
I don't
not a
like
new
her.
character. Well, I guess technically she's a new character.
I don't like Bowden.
Sort of.
I like Heboric, but he can be a bit of a jerk sometimes. Yeah, so that's my list. Panda.
Also, this question is from Emperor Claptrap. I mean, Ikariam, Iskrull, Mappo, I think are my. I just really like their interactions. We'll see what happens with Servant, and the demon Apt. Like maybe the demon is just misunderstood.
Ash.
I like Coltane a lot. I like Bolt. I like Iscarol especially. Besides that, so I like all the characters. I wouldn't say I love many of them. I appreciate all the viewpoints. I think them, but for various reasons, I just enjoy the character I listed more than the other ones.
All these questions are all about the characters, huh?
Well, that's what the
Um,
story's about, right?
And yeah, and I hear that Malazan isn't a very character-focused series.
Mhm.
Don't understand that viewpoint.
I don't understand how anybody can say that.
Yeah.
Beats me.
But my answer is basically the same as Ashaman's. I do feel a lot of compassion for Mappo, Akarium, and Felison, but Bolt, Coltane, Isgrelpust are the favorites, at least so far in these first 6 chapters.
That's true. I mean, my answers could very well change by the end of the book.
All right. And our last listener question is from The Solution, who did the review episode with Ash and Panda. Who is your least favorite character and why is it Felison? I have a
isn't.
lot
Okay.
to say about this. Panda, do you want to go first?
I don't think I could say more. I
Okay.
think I've said my piece, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've talked a lot about Felison. And like I said, I didn't like her much on my first read. But I am going to make a defense of Felison. And I took this from a YouTube video from Graceless Passion called In Defense of Felison. But uh, think of it that she's a 15-year-old noble girl who's been given a life of luxury and is betrayed by her sister. In front of her, she sees a woman's head sawed off and decides it's in her best interest to stay with the guy who did it. All this while her sister is watching. She saves her companions on the ship by selling their bodies. They very well could have died in the slave ship. She continues doing so when they're on Skull Cup to the derision of her companions. She's used, raped, beaten, and true to abusivism makes excuses for her attacker. She's also kept drugged and passed around. The only thing she cares about is survival and revenge. All the while, Hibork and Balden are thinking that she's just loving it and won't include her in their secret plans. She tries to convince herself the abuse is okay, which gives her at least an illusion of power. She and Hibork are attacked by blood flies, and the only reason she gets it so bad is because she helps Hibork first. She's a compassionate girl, and it's not fun to read at all. And she lashes out, but the character is real, and I like it.
And she's not a bad person.
No,
Mhm.
she's not.
No.
Yeah, and I told the YouTube guy that we would be talking about his video and linking it in the show notes. But I just want to piggyback on that a little bit and say that when she's being awful to the people around her, um, or acting irrationally, that is something a lot of people who go through abuse, including abuse way less severe than what she has gone through. I, 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 I struggle to think of people I know well that haven't. There's a few, but most. It's a small list of people I know well that haven't gone through some kind of abuse, whether it's like predatory abuse, like Felison's going through, or the more casual abuse that people in dire straits often inflict on each other, and a lot of times that will come out in them lashing out or acting irrationally or acting against their best interest. I know I do it, and it comes from things that I've gone through, and it can be a liability. It can make the people unlikable. It can make them do intolerable things, and that's just how that goes. And the people I know who I'm thinking of, most of them are not 15 years old, so including myself.
I would like to answer the question if I may.
Oh yeah,
Who's my
I meant
least
to
favorite
do that.
character? You can go after him, don't worry. Who's
Yeah.
my least favorite character? It is Benneth. Benneth is an abuser. Benneth lures Felison in with promises with sweet words and promises to keep her safe. And for a while he does, although he does use her, a 15-year-old girl. And he drugs her. He gets her addicted to the drug. He beats her. I don't know, call me crazy, but I don't like abusive rapist people. That's, I guess, my hot take for the episode. But someone like that is absolutely abhorrent to me, and people exactly like Benneth exist in our world, and I think most of us have probably encountered some. And there are some people I am thinking of in real life who they are Benneths, if not worse. And yeah,
I think you bring up a good point. Like, we've been focusing a lot on Felicin because we see it more from her point of view, but really, like, the perpetrator is not Felicin. It's Benneth.
Yep.
And we
Tavor.
haven't and Tavor. And we haven't really talked about those characters. And yeah, I agree with you, Ash. Least favorite
Sure,
character
you're
is
right.
Benneth.
I was going to say Malakrell, but Benneth is much worse.
Yeah, Benneth, Malakrell, and Pomqual. But also, the perpetrator isn't just Benneth; it's the system that they
That's
have
true.
on Skull Cup.
Yep.
But Benneth too. Oops. Sorry, editors. Oh man, sorry.
heck him right in the ear.
It's
So
okay.
do we have any questions we want to talk about before we end the episode?
I just want to say that I was hesitant about our discussion of Deadhouse Gates once I knew more about what I was reading. There are a lot of really tough topics, and there are definitely things that we could have said more about and gone into more details. We may have gotten some things wrong. People will disagree. Like, we try to stay out of politics, and there are a lot of things that could be said that are very divisive. And I just want to say thank you for the conversation that we've been able to have, and being open and supportive and responsive in a very productive way. So, yeah.
Here.
Right.
I think it's great that I've never felt that Erickson's ever written anything problematic that he didn't look at from a perspective that is just nothing but compassion,
Mm-hmm.
and that helps with I think talking about such difficult things.
Yeah. All right, take us out, Huron.
That concludes our discussion for this episode. If you want to join the read along or join us in the discussions we're having, check us out on the Legendarium's Discord. You can find the link on thelegendarium.com. Also follow us on Twitter @GreenTeamPod. Shout out to HorizonBrave for starting it all. Thank you to our panelists Ashaman, JasnahAsABoy, and BefuddledPanda. I'm Hurinfan. Until next time.
Who said it? Skinny jeans are out, but mullets are in? Is that you,
That
Ash?
was me. Yeah.
I had Jinko jeans when I was a kid. Those things were ridiculous.